Thanks everybody for attending our e-seminar series on Symphony 101 today. My name is Ryan Johnson. I'm a field sales engineer for the North America for Senstar, and I'll be hosting this brief, approximately 30-minute seminar on Senstar Symphony and the 101 course. I'm accompanied by my colleague, Daryl Jackson, who is in FSE for North America, and he will be moderating our chat session. So as everybody is in an attendee and listen only mode, if you do have any questions during the seminar, if you wouldn't mind, please go ahead and post those into the chat or question section of the webinar, and Daryl will moderate that section and get those answers back and respond to you as timely as possible. So we're also keeping everybody on mute the entire time, so even at the end there won't be a Q&A section. So again, please use that chat section. This is going to allow us to keep the presentation brief, succinct, and again, we thank you all for attending and showing up to see what Senstar Symphony is all about. So the agenda, just briefly today, what we're going to talk about is try to help you understand and define what the Symphony client is. We'll go through looking at video in a live view, single view, and also in a multi-view. We'll show you a historical view, essentially what it looks like when you're trying to review and find video, what the activities for cameras means and what it can do, and streamline efficiency to see where your activity on your site is occurring. We'll show you how to export video. We'll also do a brief demonstration on the built-in instant messaging app that we call Messenger within Symphony. We'll go over maps, both GIS and static maps within our Symphony platform. And then lastly, we'll cover off on the alarm log and show you ways that can build an efficiency for operators that are reviewing data that's coming into your system. So let's start with what is Symphony. Let me go ahead and give you an overview of what that is. Symphony is responsible for receiving, monitoring, managing, and unifying multiple disparate systems into a single common operating platform that builds efficiency, simplicity of operation, and the unification of Senstar branded products and the inclusion of ecosystem and third-party partners. And you'll start to see and hopefully understand that Symphony is a common operating platform and an ingestion tool for all of these different points of data. So now let me get out of this here presentation for you, and then we'll go ahead and dive directly into Symphony. Okay, so what you're seeing here is the main Symphony client that loads when you start the application up. There's a couple of different things I want to point out to you from the get-go so that you understand what I'm referencing later on in the presentation. This main menu bar up at the top is what I do often refer to. So if I say we're going to turn the timeline on in the main menu bar, this is what I'm referencing. So all of these different icons that we have up here at the top are our main menu where we will start to do actions and take care of adding devices and manipulating the software. Here on the left is the device tree, and as you can see, the device tree has a list of all of the devices that are connected to the system. Anything from video devices to our network manager for our perimeter intrusion detection products that are located at the fence line, or even Symphony Access Control or other I/O and digital inputs and outputs that might be connected to your system. Those are all listed here and going to show in the device tree. So I'll often refer to the device tree again as another starting point to start to create and build out Symphony client. And what you see here in the center is what we'll call our camera view. So any one of the cameras that is lit up when we get to the multi-views with a blue banner means that's my active tile that I'm working with. So if I say we need to go to the active tile to add a new camera, that's what I'm referring to, is anything that's wrapped in blue showing that this is my current and active video tile. Now here on the right-hand side, you'll see we have this thing called the alarm console. The alarm console is basically a ticker that's keeping track of all the alarms that are coming into and hitting the system. So I may refer to the alarm console and say an alarm is generating in the alarm console, and that's what I'm referring to. And we'll go over that in a little bit more detail later on in the presentation. So let's get started with the live view and how to build that out. So over in the device tree, you'll notice at the very top, there is a nice little banner here that is a search window. So if there's video cameras that are designated for indoor use only, I can go ahead and type that in and it'll shrink down the device tree. This becomes very useful when you have device lists of 100, 1,000 cameras or more in the event that you wanted to search for something very specific like access control. And I can go ahead and shorten that up and then start to manipulate the system as desired. So that search window does become very important, and it adds a bit of efficiency for the operators into the Symphony client. Some of the other things that I do like to show you is that you have the ability to build out folders and groups of subfolders as well. So if you have specific cameras located in hallway 1 east wing, you could identify that by a folder, and you could just type in now loop, which is the designation for this folder, and it'll pull up all those associated cameras maybe with that hallway or that wing. So again, just allowing you to navigate through your system quite a bit faster than it would be just to scroll through the entire device tree looking for a single entity. So there's a couple of different ways we can start to build out our view. If we're in our active tile, we can go ahead and simply left click on a camera and it'll populate that into the active tile. So that's option 1, and that's fairly common. You can also drag and drop, which is another very common way to start to build out your camera systems. Personally, I go for the drag and drop method because I often, I'm sure like many other operators, will get confused on where my active tile is, and I sometimes add cameras to locations I don't necessarily need them. So dragging and dropping does become a very easy and simple, quick, efficient way to build out your single view. So let's now say that this is the actual pertinent camera and this is the only thing an operator is going to ever watch. We have an option here on the main menu is to go full screen. And you'll notice that it's more of like 4 expanding arrows. So I'll select that. And what that does is that takes the active camera that we're monitoring and it removes all the noise of the thick client around it. So you can just watch the pertinent that the operator needs to see, whether it's at a guard shack or at a secretary's desk. You can escape that and it'll drop you right back down into Symphony client. So that's one way to get there. You can also right click and go ahead and go full screen. So if you do forget anything in Symphony, we kind of have like a shortcut, and that really is right click, and you can do darn near anything from exporting, going full screen, etc. And you'll hear me reference that quite a bit. So another thing that I do want to show you is you're probably wondering, what are all those things that keep showing up every time that mouse goes ahead and is moving from one location to the next? Well, these are what we call video overlays. And these video overlays only appear when you're actively moving your mouse around that location of the camera. So for example, if I let my mouse go and I don't have any activity or movement, the video overlays disappear. But as soon as I want to do something on the camera, those are going to appear and allow me to do what is necessary. So up on the top left, I'll give you a brief description of what these overlays are. We have a search window to search for activity. We have an export button. We have searching by a calendar, time, and date. We have a picture-in-picture option, and I'll go ahead and turn that on so that you can see that. And then we also have an add alarm button, which was that bell with the plus sign. So what that does is that allows you to manually create an alarm. But as I've paused video, you've also noticed my overlays down on the bottom have changed. So I have my play button where I can play back my video. I can go ahead and go forward a single frame, 1 second, 10 seconds to the next event video. I could also go back to the previous alarm or even go through bookmarks. Slide ruling for increasing and decreasing my speed up to 32x. I can even go ahead and hit my lightning bolt, which will take me back to live. So one thing I do want to show you that is quite useful within Symphony Client is something we've added in 7.3, which is this summarize video down on the bottom right of my camera screen. What that summarize video button does is it allows us to go back and review our video in quite a very succinct manner, meaning I will start here at this alarm and it's only going to play the blue strips on my timeline, which are event video and my alarms. So I'll go ahead and execute that now so that you can see it and what it actually looks like in real time. This allows the operators to very quickly and efficiently review a large amount of data and then pause on the video that they need and then go back and export that video into a 2-minute clip. They can increase or decrease the time accordingly if they wanted to as well. So that summarized video is quite a nice little ad in reviewing video for operators or system administrators. Okay. One of the other things that I do want to show you is, let's go back to our live video here, is I want to show you that we have the option on our main menu to turn on what we call video decorations, which will start to highlight the activity in the field of view for us. The other nice thing that we want to show you is our visual tracking buttons, which are new to Symphony 7 as well. These visual tracking buttons allow us to navigate backwards and forwards and locate them anywhere that we would prefer on our screen in order to say this is logically the next camera in line. So if I was to click on that, number 4, it's going to move me to my device tree on wrong way camera loop. If I continued through and went back to number 7, it'll take me to the LPR video loop, and so on and so forth. What you noticed here on this last camera is that I can also modify these shapes. So if I needed a back arrow, I could choose that back arrow as well. And so this helps the operators navigate maybe through a hallway, cameras 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or even around the perimeter of a facility and logically going through cameras 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, instead of having to go back to my device tree and go hallway 1, camera 2, and then slowly go through that process. These visual tracking buttons are quite nice and efficient. Okay, so I turned on the timeline a bit earlier to play back some video, and you're wondering, well, what's all that noise in that timeline? We chunk out video in 30-minute segments, and you'll notice that prior to about 7:32, there was no video. That's when I turned my server on first thing this morning. And that is an indication in the timeline, this emptiness or this black banner, that there is no video that has been recorded. If I come here to when I turned my system on, you'll notice that there's consistently a gray banner behind all of these blue and red marks on my timeline. What that indicates in the timeline is that we do have video recording. Now on top of that, we have another layer, which is blue. The blue is a key indicator that we do have motion activity that's happened within that field of view of the camera. And then lastly, we have these hash marks. And these hash marks are alarms that have happened while the system has been recording. And so you'll notice that if I click on those, it pulls up and highlights with our decorations the activity. It shows the alarm of the person driving the wrong way down the road, and it brings me to that spot in the timeline. So if you are an operator, you would think, wow, I can look at this and go through, and it might just be a gray banner for 3 hours, and then all of a sudden I've got this blue strip, and I can just simply click on that, and it'll take me directly to that motion activity. So very quickly, can you get good visibility of all the activity that's happening within your server farm and your environment? So again, if you get lost anywhere in Symphony, right click, and then let's go and take it to full screen, search, export, etc. That's one thing I want to continue to point out, is that Symphony, within about 2 or 3 clicks, you can get just about everything that you need to done and accomplished. Great. So that's a single view. Let's go ahead and go back to a live view. And what we're going to do here now is go into the multi-view. So I'm going to blank this camera out just so that we can start fresh, turn off my timeline and decorations. And there's a couple of different ways you can build out views. Symphony is extremely customizable. Everything's malleable, so you can move it and put it wherever you want. So this button here at the top, where it's got 3 squares with the plus button, this is adding a camera video panel to my environment now. But you'll notice that it's just floating around there, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But it is an active camera. So what I'll do is I'll again just left click because it's active. And now I've got video here, which is great. I'm going to activate another panel and add 1 more camera. And now I've got 2 streams of video coming through. But you'll notice, again, it's just stuck out here in the middle of nowhere. Like we talked about earlier with video overlays, is as you start to move this video tile around, you'll see these overlays appear. What these overlays mean is if I was to let that camera go, it's going to drop it into place inside of the Symphony client. So once I do that, it then relocates that camera to these different locations that I have available to snap those objects in. And I can go ahead and build that size out. The other thing I like to show is that there's this box right here in the middle, and you're probably thinking, well, why would I drop it on top? Oftentimes, operators like to see the camera's full screen for better visibility and situational awareness, okay? Down here on the bottom, because I've done that full screen, you'll notice that I've got two different tabs, and I can tabulate all of those cameras and move right through those. So as I click on those, the next camera comes up full screen. So again, think of if you don't want to use visual tracking buttons, maybe I've got camera hallway 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that's the zone I monitor. I can just simply click through those and track individuals or assets through those fields of view. But again, let's tear that out and let's put it to the side. So that's one way to build out your video display and getting multi-view. The other option is to come up here to this camera view button on the main menu and say, let's go ahead and build out a new docked view. Let's go to 4 cameras. Now again, you could add 1 camera at a time, and I don't like that because it might slow me down a little bit here in the presentation. So I'm just grabbing the entire group folder and I'll drop that in. And by doing that, what it's going to do now is it's going to drop everything in and it's going to add it. Let me change the quality 1 second. I apologize. And what it's going to do is it's going to build out that entire field of view for me, and it'll just take all the devices in the folder and add them there. So this is an easy way to get situational awareness for what you're doing at your facility. The other nice option, like I said, everything in Symphony is customizable. So if you had, 1 camera that's not of real concern, but you do have a primary you need to build out, you can go ahead and resize the camera tiles accordingly. Okay. The other nice thing is that, let's say this is my main panel and I want to watch it, but I don't want to just watch 1 camera. If you right click, you can go to the settings and then you can say, let's turn the alarms on. And I only want to see alarms that come through my system on that video tile, and I want to hide them after 10 seconds of inactivity. So I'll go ahead and apply that. And now this video tile here is going to become automated. And so you'll see as I continue to talk and show things, now video is going to pop in here automatically and then go ahead and retire itself accordingly after 10 seconds. So we'll go ahead and just leave that. But I want to point that out because it's another way, again, to build situational awareness, draw attention to that camera, and then automate the entire process so the workflow becomes more efficient for your operators. So let's say now that I've come in here and I've got my event video popping up, but there is something that I want to search here, but I also want to synchronize it across these other 3 cameras. I can turn on this padlock in the main menu banner. And what that's going to do is that's going to lock the video tiles and synchronize them to the same point in timeline. So if I was to hit pause here, you'll notice that all of my cameras have paused at that same location. So now that I've turned on my timeline, you'll also notice that as I'm clicking through, each one of those cameras circles that is an indicator of where I'm at in the timeline harmonizes. So now they go back to live. And now let's say I want to go back to this point in time as well. That's fine too. And now I can also play back my video here as well. So they'll all synchronize and start to play back simultaneously, which is quite nice from an operator standpoint. So let's take those live again. So very quickly and efficiently, can you say I've got 2 or 3 associated cameras and I want to search the video and find it. Lock the padlock and then go ahead and carry out that action with those cameras in your field of view. So here's another thing that we want to show you. As you notice, we've got alarm and event video popping up here on the right now. Is I'm going to minimize this again back down to a single view just so it's not nearly as busy and we can maybe pay attention here. So I've got this other thing called activity for cameras. And now I do have to give kudos to my good colleague there, Daryl, because he brought this up and said, Ryan, this is something we should probably pay more attention to. And I thought, maybe you're right. This is something that I should probably show a bit more of. Now, what you're seeing here, and let me try to make this a bit larger so everybody can see it, is you're seeing a couple of different timelines and film strips that look very similar to the timelines in Symphony. And I've got all the activity and alarms that are happening real time for each one of those individual cameras. And I can zoom into these timelines, and then I'll just slide myself back over so you can see what that looks like. Now I have an option. If I was to click on any alarm, I can go ahead and open up a new docked panel and then drop that into my view activity for cameras. Let me bring this up a little bit. So now that I've done that, it's dropped me right into that location and point in time where the alarm is. So think of a very large system, and you've got, 35 cameras in your parking lot. It's very hard to understand all 35 cameras where the activity began or stopped or where an alarm occurred. So you could select those cameras here and select specific cameras. So the nice thing there is that I've got 4 or 5 different cameras, maybe in my parking lot. I shrink it up, and now I've got those cameras displayed, and I say, oh, there's more motion. And as I click on it, you notice that now I'm building out my same camera panel and view here, and I can even review that video directly in this activity for cameras panel. Let's say that was the activity that happened, right? Gentleman did a slip and fall. I can also immediately export from this same panel so that the system becomes very efficient in showing you a large amount of data, where your activity and alarms are, allowing you to review it through your video panels and export the video directly from that point. So this activities for camera is another very useful tool that we have built into Symphony that allows you to add efficiency within the entire platform. Okay, so now that we've done that, we've kind of danced around this topic for quite a few minutes, is the exporting a video. It's quite simple, but I do want to show you a couple of tricks that I use. I like to use my timeline and do a simple right click, start my export, right click, and end my export, and then it opens my export window. So that's something that I like to use. It's kind of a preference of mine, is right clicking and putting in my tickers on my timeline, start and stop. Oftentimes individuals like to use just the simple export button because it opens it up, and then you could modify your time as you prefer here, right? So then you could add that. And lastly, we have the calendar search, which is quite nice. I could go back to a specific date and time on the 24th maybe, and then I could just select that video and it'll pull it up for me as well. And then more than likely, I'm just going to go back to my old habits and right click start and stop, and then we'll execute this export for you. So now that I've done that, I can export to a local disk, or if I'm under maintenance, to cloud for storage. I can select what directory I want it to go to here. And then I can define the format, IRA or AVI, which is our native format, is IRA, and then include a player with it. Or if you know that it exists, you can deselect that. For chain of custody, maybe you're concerned about password protection. You could go ahead and enable that as well. You also have the luxury of splitting the files of your exports up to 4 gigs. So you could chop that up as you need to for long exports. The other thing I do want to show while I'm in here is I can add associated cameras up to 8. So if I was to select this, it'll ask for duplicates, of course, and it'll say, hey, you have a duplicate. Would you want to remove it? Yeah, I do. But I can add all of these cameras, and they will synchronize to that point in time where I'm exporting my video, okay? So now that I've done that, I could say, yeah, well, I really don't need this camera or this camera or this camera. And then you could chop that down and filter accordingly. But let's go ahead and just run the export so you can see what happens here with my status bar. So it'll show that I'm exporting the video. It'll show my total progress. Total progress would mean if I had multiple cameras, and then it'll say it's completed. It names it. And then it says, do you want to open the folder? And you could say yes, and then play your video back accordingly. So even the export process is quite simple by working directly on the timeline, by going to our export button, or even searching by time and date within the calendar view. Okay. Another application that we have built in is an instant messaging application. So think of any environment where you've got 2 or more operators operating at any time. From the main menu bar, I'm going to open up my Messenger app. And what this Messenger app does is, let me expand this a bit more so that you can see it. Down here on this bottom right is this Messenger app, and I can choose where do I want to send a message. So I'm a system admin and I've got a guard, right? Or maybe I want to send it to a specific group. I can do that as well. So I'm going to say here, look out for black Jeep, right? And then I can go ahead and send my message. And that message is going to go ahead and be distributed to all the guards that are logged in into that system. And so there might be certain communications you have, or they might be an operator and need to send it to an admin and say, hey, I want you guys to review bookmark, right? And then you can go back into your bookmarks and you could drop this down and you could say, oh, I need to go here and review this bookmark because that's the only one left in my list, and I clear them when I'm done. So it's a nice way internally within Symphony, and not having to go to some other third-party application to do internal organizational communications, is send those chat messages directly to individuals or even to an entire group, as you can see down here on the bottom left. So that is kind of nice. And even in during critical situations, you could potentially have pre-written messages stored and saved that you could just distribute and push out as well. So that messaging app is quite nice, and it does, again, add a bit more efficiency into this single pane of glass that we call Symphony. Okay. So lastly, I want to show you here another application that we've got built in is our map navigation. Now, map navigation, I'm going to pull this out and make it a bit larger just so everybody can see it. This is a substation. We do a lot of work in electrical substations, so I wanted to kind of highlight this for another client. You'll notice that I've got this Network Manager Simulation Zone 1. This is the integration with our perimeter intrusion products. What this is allowing us to do is to define the zones of the perimeter. So I've got a simulator here, and I'm going to go ahead and fire off an alarm so that you can see what happens and how it reacts. It starts to flash red and white, and that's a key indicator for an operator that something is happening in that zone. So as that's flashing, now I'm going to minimize this just a little bit more so you can still see it flashing. But now there's an associated camera with that. As I click on that camera, it'll highlight it, and then you'll notice that it populated it here full screen for me. So this is a very efficient way for operators to gather information about the site, what's happening. I received an alarm. Now let me select the associated camera with that. And again, if you had other cameras there, you could select those as well. So you might have multiples. So think of a large organization with a multi-story building or a very large perimeter or a lot of cameras. Oftentimes operators prefer to navigate through the device tree from a map. And so they can get understanding visually where they're at in a facility and then just select those cameras. We also have hyperlinks built in. So if you wanted to hyperlink through a series of maps, you can do that. We also have GIS integration. So if you have a GIS map, which I do here, I could then go ahead and zoom in and zoom out on my GIS map, and I can then move it around as I deem necessary and even load specific cameras into that GIS map as well. So we have two options, both static and GIS mapping. Okay. So hopefully that was a beneficial demonstration for you. The last actual functional component that I want to show you here in Symphony Client is the alarm console. You've probably been watching it and you'll see just a ticker of information coming through. And that ticker of information is all the alarms that are happening within my system. So let me turn on my decorations. So you'll find that the 805HEX is actually the one that fired off the alarm, and that's why it's hitting in my alarm log. This is what we call our simple or basic mode. Here you can right click and you can mark it as an alarm, right? You can mark things as false alarms, and then you can go through, but it's a very basic ticker, just top to bottom, feeds in and out. If you expand it, it puts you into what we call an advanced mode. This advanced mode gives you a lot more functionality. So if I was here on these specific alarms, you'll notice there's a lot of different things going on here. So I've got instructions that I can have. So there's a conditional procedure for this specific alarm. I need to mark it as real and actionable. I need to say human intrusion. And then I need to save it and share it. So I'll save it, and I'm going to share that with another operator that's logged in, or maybe a system supervisor. So just very quickly, I wanted to build out a little bit of maybe a site layout. And so I've got three different things here: my maps, my device tree, and my messenger. I also have the advanced mode of the alarm log running. Oftentimes customers ask, how can I come back into this exact same layout and structure? Well, we would save that current screen layout and we would just name it. So we could just say RJ demo. And by doing such, it allows us as an operator, when I come in and log in, I could either load that layout directly or just select the layout that I prefer. So there's a couple of different options with those layouts. Is you could just select them, or every time it starts up, you could load a custom layout file. And I'm going to say I want you always to load this file, and okay. So every time Symphony opens, it comes with my maps, my device tree, my messenger, my advanced mode, and everything is laid out accordingly on my multiple screens on my system. So lastly, that was what I wanted to show you. I do appreciate you attending and the time that you have spent with us to learn a little bit more about Senstar Symphony, and we appreciate the participation. And if you do have any further questions, I'll go ahead and pull up mine and Daryl's contact information one more time so that you can maybe jot that down. And if you do have any other needs, please feel free to reach out to us. And again, thank you.